Single dad burns his hand saving the CEO's daughter from a blazing elevator. Days later, Ethan Miller wiped the sweat from his brow as he polished the chrome-plated floor of the 87th level in the towering Nexus Corporation headquarters. The building, a gleaming testament to interspecies cooperation on Earth's first truly cosmopolitan colony, housed over 30 different alien species working together in what politicians called the greatest experiment in galactic harmony. For Ethan, it was just where he mopped floors to feed his son. Maintenance staff to level 42, emergency protocols engaged, the building's AI announced, its melodic voice betraying no urgency despite the flashing amber lights that suddenly bathed the corridor. Ethan's comm unit buzzed. Miller, you're closest. Some kind of electrical fire in the executive lift bank, his supervisor barked. On it, Ethan replied, already sprinting toward the service elevator. As the doors opened on level 42, chaos greeted him. Smoke billowed from the sealed executive elevator doors, while a crowd of aliens, mostly blue-skinned Ceralidians in expensive business attire, gestured frantically with their four-fingered hands. My daughter, a striking Ceralidian female in an impeccably tailored suit, grabbed Ethan's arm. She's trapped inside. Ethan assessed the situation in seconds. The building's automated systems had locked down the elevator to contain the fire. Standard procedure, but deadly if someone was inside. How old? Ethan demanded. 6 cycles, the Ceralidian answered, her normally composed features twisted with fear. Please, human, she's all I have. 6 cycles, about the same age as Ethan's son Connor. Without hesitation, Ethan grabbed the emergency kit from the wall and pulled out the manual override tool. The display panel showed the elevator stuck between floors, its temperature rising rapidly. Stand back, he shouted, jamming the tool into the door seam. As the doors reluctantly parted, a wave of heat blasted his face. Through the smoke, he could see the top of the elevator car just below the floor level. Inside, huddled in the corner, was a small Ceralidian girl, her turquoise skin ashen with fear, wearing a bright orange dress that stood out against the smoke. Hey there, Ethan called, trying to keep his voice steady. I'm going to get you out, okay? The girl looked up, her sky-blue eyes wide with terror. Ethan wedged himself into the gap and reached for the emergency hatch on top of the elevator. The metal seared his palms as he wrenched it open, but he bit back the pain. The girl's frightened whimpers reminded him too much of Connor during thunderstorms. Come on, sweetheart. Reach up to me, he coaxed. The flames were spreading now, licking at the control panel. The girl stood frozen. What's your name? Ethan asked, trying a different approach. Livy, she whispered. Livy, I'm Ethan. I have a little boy just like you. He'd be really scared too, but you know what? You're being so brave right now. The girl's antennae perked up slightly. My hands are going to hurt when I lift you, so I might make some funny faces. Don't worry about it, okay? She nodded, and Ethan reached down, ignoring the searing pain as his already burned hands gripped the hot metal edges. With a grunt, he hoisted himself further into the elevator and scooped up the child. Hold tight around my neck, he instructed. As he lifted her toward the opening, a secondary explosion rocked the elevator. Ethan shielded the girl with his body as debris rained down. With one final push, he thrust Livy through the opening into the waiting arms of her mother. Pulling himself out was agony. The skin on his hands sloughed off as he gripped the hot metal edges, but adrenaline kept him moving until he collapsed on the cool floor of level 42. Medical team to level 42, the ANI announced, finally acknowledging the emergency. Through pain-blurred vision, Ethan saw the Ceralidian businesswoman clutching her daughter, their foreheads pressed together in the traditional familial greeting of their species. Thank you, human, the alien said, her voice melodic yet commanding, even thick with emotion. I am Nara Ven, Chief Executive of Nexus Corporation. You have saved my greatest treasure. Ethan tried to respond, but the pain overwhelmed him, and darkness closed in. His last coherent thought was of Connor, waiting at the colony school for a father who wouldn't be picking him up today. Ethan awoke to the steady beep of medical monitors and the distinct antiseptic smell that was somehow universal across human and alien medical facilities. His hands were encased in regenerative gel sleeves, top-tier medical tech he definitely couldn't afford on a janitor's salary. Daddy! Connor's voice cut through his disorientation. Ethan turned to see his 7-year-old son perched on a chair beside the bed. A data pad with animated characters paused on his lap. Before Ethan could respond, Connor scrambled onto the bed, careful to avoid the medical equipment. "Easy there, Tiger," Ethan said, his voice rough. "Where are we? How did you get here?" "We're in the executive medical wing," came a melodic voice from the doorway, "and I arranged for your son's transport from his educational facility." Nara then stood in the doorway, her tall, slender frame silhouetted against the bright corridor light. Unlike the frantic mother from yesterday, today she exuded composed authority in a tailored suit that complemented her turquoise skin. Her silver blue hair was swept into an elegant updo that accentuated her high cheekbones and the delicate ridges that framed her face. "Miss Venton had her fancy shuttle pick me up from school," Connor explained, eyes wide with excitement. "It had real autopilot and everything." Nara stepped into the room and Ethan noticed the small figure partially hidden behind her legs. Little Livy peeked out, her sky-blue eyes curious but cautious. "How are your hands feeling?" Nara asked, approaching the bed. "Like they're still on fire, but I'm guessing that's better than the alternative," Ethan replied with a pained smile. "The doctors say you'll regain full functionality within a week. The regenerative treatment is expensive, but the least Nexus could provide." There was an awkward pause as Ethan processed her words. He'd never be able to repay this kind of medical care. "I don't know how to thank you," he began, but Nara raised a 4-fingered hand to stop him. "No, I am the one indebted to you, Mr. Miller. You saved my daughter's life at great personal risk." Her formal tone softened. "There is no greater treasure in any world than one's child." Connor, oblivious to the adult tension, had slid off the bed and was cautiously approaching Livy. "Hi, I'm Connor. Do you like space racers?" he asked, holding up his data pad. Livy's antennae perked up with interest, and she stepped out from behind her mother. "I have the premium version," she said shyly. Within moments, the two children were seated together, heads bent over the game, the universal language of childhood transcending their biological differences. Nara watched them with a mixture of surprise and warmth. "Children adapt so easily," she observed. "Perhaps we adults complicate matters unnecessarily." "They haven't learned all our prejudices yet," Ethan agreed. Nara pulled up a chair beside his bed. Up close, Ethan noticed the subtle iridescence of her skin and the faint scent of something like cinnamon and ozone that seemed to surround her. "I've reviewed your employment file," she said, her tone shifting to business. "Single parent, colony resident for 3 years, previously served in the Earth Defense Force as a tactical specialist." Ethan tensed. "That was another life." "A valuable one," she countered. "You're overqualified for maintenance work." "Not many options for ex-military with a kid to raise," Ethan said, a defensive edge creeping into his voice. "Especially not on a colony where humans are still seen as the newcomers." Nara's expression shifted, something like guilt flashing across her features. "Yes, I'm aware of the challenges your species faces here. Despite official policy, prejudice persists." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "The elevator incident was no accident, Mr. Miller." Ethan's military instincts immediately kicked in. "What do you mean?" "Our security team found evidence of tampering. Someone deliberately targeted that elevator, knowing Livy would be using it." Her voice remained steady, but Ethan could see the fear behind her composed exterior. "There have been threats. Corporate rivals who believe a half-human child would be a more suitable heir to Nexus." "Half-human?" Ethan couldn't hide his surprise. Nara's gaze dropped to her hands. "Livy's father was human. He died before she was born, in an accident that I believe was anything but." The revelation hung in the air between them. Ethan glanced at Livy, noticing for the first time the subtle human characteristics in her features. The shape of her nose, the curve of her smile as she laughed at something Connor said. "I have a proposition," Nara continued. "I need someone I can trust to protect my daughter. Someone outside my corporate circle, someone with tactical experience, someone who understands what it means to protect a child at all costs." "You want to hire me as security?" Ethan asked incredulously. "I want to hire you as Livy's personal guardian, officially as her tutor in human culture. It would mean a significant pay increase, private quarters in the executive residence level, and the best educational opportunities for your son. Their eyes met, and Ethan felt an unexpected current between them. Not just the tension of their situation, but something more primal, a recognition between two parents fighting to protect their children in a dangerous world. Why trust me? He asked softly. You barely know me. Nara's lips curved into a slight smile. Because when that elevator was burning, you didn't see the heir to Nexus Corporation. You saw a child who needed help. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. This is where we're going to live? Connor's jaw dropped as they stepped into the executive apartment. The boy darted from window to window, pressing his face against the transparent aluminum that offered a panoramic view of the colony's gleaming spires and the purple-tinged mountains beyond. Ethan whistled low, equally impressed but more cautious. The apartment was easily 5 times the size of their previous quarters in the workers' residential block. Sleek furniture in muted blues and silvers complemented the minimalist Cerulean aesthetic, though he noticed thoughtful human touches. A traditional coffee maker in the kitchen, his standard Earth gravity settings on the environmental controls. Nara thought of everything, he murmured, running his newly healed fingers along the smooth countertop. Your personal effects have been transferred from your previous residence, announced a melodic AI voice. Would you prefer them unpacked automatically or manually? Manually, Ethan replied quickly. Old military habits died hard. He needed to know the layout, the escape routes, the potential security weaknesses. As Connor explored the bedrooms, Dad, my bed hovers. Ethan conducted his own inspection. The apartment was on the 92nd floor of the executive tower, accessible only by private elevator with biometric security. Impressive, but not impenetrable. In the master bedroom, Ethan ran his hand along the underside of an elegant desk and felt something that shouldn't be there. Carefully, he extracted a tiny device no larger than his thumbnail, a surveillance bug sophisticated but recognizable to someone with his training. Instead of destroying it, he placed it back exactly as he'd found it. Knowledge was power, and someone was watching. The question was, who? A chime announced a visitor. The door slid open to reveal Nara, dressed more casually than he'd seen her before, in a flowing tunic that accentuated her slender form. Are the accommodations satisfactory? She asked, stepping inside. They're incredible, Ethan admitted. Too incredible for a former janitor. Nara's lips curved into a slight smile. Your title is now Cultural Integration Specialist, with a focus on security protocols. The salary and accommodations reflect your position in my daughter's life. She moved closer, lowering her voice. Have you found any unexpected additions to your quarters? Ethan raised an eyebrow. 3 so far. 1 in the bedroom, 1 in the kitchen, 1 by the main entrance. 4, she corrected. The bathroom as well. You knew. I suspected. My board of directors insists on oversight of all my decisions. Her expression hardened. Particularly those involving humans. Connor burst into the room, interrupting their conversation. Miss Venn? Can Livy come play? My room has a holographic ceiling with stars. Nara's formal demeanor softened instantly. She's finishing her studies, but perhaps later this evening. She knelt to Connor's level. Would you like to join her for dinner in our residence? We're having traditional Cerulean cuisine. Connor's eyes widened. Is it the blue stuff that makes your tongue tingle? The cafeteria served that once. Indeed, Nara laughed, a melodic sound that Ethan found unexpectedly appealing. Though I assure you, our chef prepares it much better than your cafeteria. After Connor raced back to continue exploring, Nara turned to Ethan. There's another matter. Tomorrow evening is the annual Galactic Commerce Gala. As Nexus Corporation's host, I'm expected to attend with an escort. And you want me to handle security? Ethan asked. I want you to accompany me, she clarified, officially as my cultural advisor, unofficially as my personal security. The most influential beings in the sector will be present, including those who might wish harm to Livy. Ethan frowned. Won't it seem strange bringing your janitor as your +1? Former janitor, she corrected, stepping closer. Current advisor. and no stranger than a Ceralidian CEO raising a half-human daughter alone. The air between them seemed to charge with electricity. Up close, the iridescence of her skin was hypnotic, shifting subtly with each breath. "The children will remain here under triple security," she continued. "I've arranged for Connor to join Livy's evening lessons. They're already inseparable." "I noticed," Ethan said with a smile. "Connor's never had a friend adjust to him so quickly. Usually the other kids." "Treat him differently for being human," Nara finished. "Yes, Livy experiences similar isolation for her mixed heritage." Their eyes met, and Ethan felt that unexpected connection again. Stronger this time. They were both outsiders in their own ways, both fighting to give their children a better life than they'd had. "I should warn you," Ethan said, breaking the moment. "I don't own anything suitable for a galactic gala." Nara's eyes traveled down his body in a way that sent heat coursing through him. "That's already been addressed. A tailor will arrive tomorrow morning." Her lips curved in a smile that could only be described as mischievous. "I took the liberty of providing your measurements from your medical scan." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Thorough?" "I'm known for my attention to detail," she replied, her tone carrying a hint of something that wasn't entirely professional. As she turned to leave, her hand brushed his, a touch that lingered just a moment too long to be accidental. The contact sent a jolt through Ethan's body that had nothing to do with alien biology and everything to do with the primal recognition between two adults who'd been alone too long. "Until tomorrow, then," she said softly. After she left, Ethan stood motionless, his skin still tingling where she'd touched him. He glanced at the spot where he knew the surveillance device was hidden and smiled grimly. Let them watch. They'd see nothing but a cultural advisor preparing for a gala. What was happening between him and Nara, whatever this tension was, that would remain private. For now. Ethan tugged at the collar of his formal attire, a midnight blue suit cut in the latest Terran Ceralidian fusion style. The tailor had arrived that morning as promised, bringing fabrics Ethan couldn't afford on a year's janitor salary. "Stop fidgeting," Nara murmured as their private transport glided toward the Grand Nexus Hall. "You look quite striking." Her gaze lingered on how the tailored jacket accentuated his broad shoulders, and Ethan found himself equally distracted by her appearance. She wore a gown that seemed to capture starlight itself, iridescent fabric that shifted between deep blue and silver with each movement, complementing the natural shimmer of her skin. A delicate silver circlet crowned her head, marking her status as CEO. "The children are secure?" he asked, forcing himself to focus on the mission. "Triple security as promised. My most trusted guards plus automated systems." She touched a small device at her wrist. "And this alerts me instantly if anything changes." The transport docked at the private entrance to the Grand Nexus Hall. As they stepped out, Ethan offered his arm in the human tradition. Nara hesitated only briefly before slipping her four-fingered hand into the crook of his elbow. "Remember," she whispered, "you're my cultural advisor. Stay close, observe everything, but let me handle the politics." The Grand Nexus Hall took Ethan's breath away, a massive dome of transparent aluminum revealing the star-filled sky above, supported by graceful arches that seemed to defy gravity. Representatives from at least 20 different species mingled beneath floating light sculptures. "Nara Ven," boomed a deep voice, a massive reptilian being approached, his scales gleaming with embedded jewels. "Bold of you to bring a human as your escort." "Ambassador Kreth," Nara replied smoothly. "May I present Ethan Miller, my advisor on Terran cultural integration?" The reptilian's vertical pupils narrowed. "Cultural integration? Or something more personal?" "Rumors spread quickly about your preferences." Ethan tensed, but Nara's grip on his arm tightened in warning. "Ambassador, surely you're not suggesting that my business decisions are influenced by personal matters?" Her tone remained pleasant, but Ethan detected the steel beneath. "Of course not," Kreth replied with a toothy smile that held no warmth. "Though one wonders if your late husband's species has clouded your judgment regarding Nexus's future." Before Nara could respond, the orchestra began playing, and she smoothly steered Ethan away. "Kreth is chief financial officer of our main competitor," she explained quietly, "and one of our prime suspects." Throughout the evening, Ethan observed the complex dance of alien politics while maintaining his cover. He noted which beings approached Nara with genuine respect and which harbored thinly veiled hostility. Most concerning was how many glanced at him with disgust or amusement. Clearly, a human at this level of society was considered either a threat or a joke. "Your species has quite the reputation," a willowy alien with translucent skin commented as Ethan collected drinks from the bar. "So passionate, so unpredictable." "We prefer adaptable," Ethan replied with a practiced smile. "Indeed. One might wonder how adaptable. You've been to Ceralidian physiology." The alien's gaze drifted meaningfully toward Nara across the room. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he maintained his composure. "I find xenobiology fascinating in all its forms. As he returned to Nara's side, the orchestra began playing a slower melody. Couples moved to the center of the hall, engaging in a dance that seemed part waltz, part flowing martial art. "We should join them," Nara said suddenly. "I don't know the steps," Ethan protested. "It's similar to your Earth waltz, with a few adaptations." Her eyes held a challenge. "Unless you're afraid." "Never," he replied, setting down their drinks and taking her hand. As they moved to the dance floor, Ethan felt the weight of hundreds of alien gazes. Nara placed one hand on his shoulder, the other clasping his palm. The slight differences in their anatomy, her longer fingers, the subtle texture of her skin, suddenly felt electric. "Follow my lead," she murmured, "then I'll follow yours." They began moving to the ethereal music, Nara guiding him through the unfamiliar patterns. Ethan was grateful for his military training as he quickly adapted to the rhythm. After the first minute, something shifted between them, a perfect synchronization that felt almost supernatural. "You're a natural," she whispered, her face close to his. "Good teacher," he replied, his voice rougher than intended. As the dance continued, Ethan became aware of the scandal they were creating. The whispers, the stares. But in that moment, with Nara in his arms, he couldn't bring himself to care. "They're watching us," he said softly. "Let them," she replied, her eyes never leaving his. "Sometimes the most effective strategy is to hide in plain sight." The music swelled, and Ethan executed a perfect turn, dipping Nara slightly. The move brought their bodies flush against each other, and he felt her sharp intake of breath. The physical contact sent a jolt of desire through him that was impossible to ignore. When the music ended, they remained locked together a moment too long. The applause that followed seemed distant, unimportant compared to the unspoken communication passing between them. As they made their way off the dance floor, Kreth intercepted them, his reptilian features twisted in distaste. "Quite the performance," he hissed. "Your board will be interested to see how thoroughly you've embraced human customs, Nara." "The board serves at my discretion, Ambassador," she replied coolly. "Not the other way around." "For now," Kreth replied, "but even CEOs can be replaced when they forget where their true loyalties should lie." The threat hung in the air as he slithered away. "We should leave," Ethan said quietly. "That wasn't just corporate politics." Nara nodded, her expression grave. "I've seen enough, and there are matters we need to discuss. Privately." The journey back to the executive tower passed in charged silence. Ethan's mind raced with everything he'd observed and everything he'd felt in Nara's arms. Both seemed equally dangerous. The moment they entered Nara's private quarters, the composed CEO facade crumbled. She removed her silver circlet with trembling hands, placing it on a floating pedestal by the entrance. "Let me check on the children first," she said, her voice tight with barely contained emotion. Ethan followed her down a corridor adorned with what appeared to be ancient Ceralidian art, flowing sculptures that seemed to defy physics. They paused at a doorway, and Nara pressed her palm to the scanner. The door slid open silently. Inside, Connor and Livy were curled up on opposite ends of a crescent-shaped couch, both fast asleep. A holographic storybook hovered above them, paused mid-tale. Livy clutched a stuffed earth animal, a gift from Connor, Ethan guessed, while his son had somehow acquired a small Ceralidian puzzle box that glowed faintly in his relaxed grip. "They exhausted themselves," whispered the Ceralidian guard stationed by the door. The boy taught her Earth games, and she taught him our counting songs. Nara's expression softened as she gazed at the sleeping children. Transfer them to their beds, please, Taryn. Then you're dismissed for the night. The automated systems will suffice. After the guard gently carried the children to their respective rooms, Nara led Ethan to a private study. Unlike the formal, minimalist design of the rest of her quarters, this room felt personal. Shelves lined with physical books, a luxury in digital times, comfortable seating, and a large window overlooking the colony's nightscape. No surveillance here, she said, pressing a panel that caused the window to frost over. This room is completely secure. She moved to a cabinet and removed a decanter filled with amber liquid. Terran whiskey, your people make remarkable spirits. A woman of taste, Ethan commented as she poured 2 glasses. Jared, Livy's father, introduced me to it. She handed him a glass, their fingers brushing. He said it was liquid courage. Ethan took a sip, savoring the burn. Tell me about him. Nara settled into a chair, her gown pooling around her like liquid starlight. Jared was a human diplomat assigned to facilitate trade between our species. Brilliant, principled, fearless. Traits I've noticed are common in humans. She smiled sadly. We were not supposed to happen. Interspecies relationships were discouraged then, especially between executives and diplomats. But you happened anyway. Yes. Her eyes met his. Humans have a remarkable ability to make the impossible seem inevitable. She took a long drink before continuing. When I became pregnant, it caused a scandal. The board wanted me to terminate. They claimed a hybrid child would weaken Nexus. Jared fought for us. He was preparing documentation to take us back to Earth when his shuttle exploded during a routine journey. An accident? Ethan asked, already knowing the answer. The official investigation said yes. I never believed it. Her voice hardened. I was 7 months pregnant and suddenly alone, fighting to keep both my position and my child. I won, but at a cost. I've spent 6 years building walls around Livy and myself, trusting no one. Until a janitor with burned hands, Ethan said softly. Nara set down her glass and moved to sit beside him on the couch. You remind me of him. Not physically. Jared was slighter, more academic. But that instinct to protect, to act without hesitation when someone is in danger. Her hand reached out, tracing the faint scars on his palms. These hands saved my daughter without thought of reward or consequence. How could I not trust them? The touch sent electricity through Ethan's body. Her skin was cooler than a human's, with a texture like fine silk. He turned his hand to capture hers. I should tell you about Connor's mother, he said quietly. Military relationship. She wasn't ready for a child and I couldn't abandon him. We agreed I'd raise him and she'd pursue her career off-world. She sends messages occasionally, but... You've been alone too, Nara finished. The space between them seemed to compress, the air charged with unspoken possibilities. Ethan could smell her exotic scent, something like cinnamon and ozone, and found himself leaning closer. A piercing alarm shattered the moment. They both jumped to their feet, instantly alert. Nara's wrist device flashed red. Security breach, she said, her voice shifting from intimate to commanding in an instant. Children's quarters. They raced down the corridor, Ethan drawing the compact pulse pistol he'd concealed in his formal wear. The door to Livy's room was still sealed, but the security panel beside it showed signs of tampering, microscopic probes attempting to bypass the biometric locks. Amateur work, Ethan muttered, examining the device. They didn't get in. But they tried, Nara replied, her face pale, while we were at the gala. While we were distracted. The realization hit them both simultaneously. The gala had been a diversion. Someone had wanted them away from the children. The kids are safe, Ethan assured her, checking the security feeds. The attempt failed. But this was an inside job, someone with access codes to this level. Nara's expression hardened into something dangerous. I want to know who. Tonight. Ethan nodded, already formulating a plan. We need to check the security logs, see who accessed this floor while we were gone. As they moved to the central security panel, Nara suddenly stopped, turning to face him. Ethan, what happened? What was about to happen between us can wait, he finished for her. The children come first. Always. Relief and something deeper flashed in her eyes. She reached up, her cool palm against his cheek. This is why humans fascinate me. Your priorities are never confused. Before he could respond, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, a brief electric contact that sent shockwaves through his system. Cerulean lips were cooler than human ones, but the sensation was intoxicating. For courage, she whispered against his mouth. Now let's catch whoever is threatening our children. The security logs revealed only authorized personnel had accessed the floor, Nara's most trusted guards and household staff. But one name appeared during an unusual time slot. Taryn, the guard who had been watching the children. He was supposed to be on break then, Nara said, her voice tight. And look, he accessed the main security hub right before returning to duty. Perfect opportunity to plant the bypass device, Ethan concluded. Where is he now? A quick check of the system showed Taryn had left the building immediately after being dismissed. Too convenient, Ethan muttered. He knew we'd check the logs. Nara's eyes narrowed. Taryn has served my family for years if he's involved. Then someone got to him, Ethan finished, and we need to find out who. They shared a look of determination, the interrupted moment of intimacy not forgotten but channeled into a shared purpose, protecting their children at all costs. Are you sure this will work? Nara asked, her voice barely above a whisper as they finalized their plan in her secure study. Dawn was breaking over the colony, painting the sky in shades of lavender and gold. Neither of them had slept, spending the night analyzing security footage and in developing their strategy. It's our best option, Ethan replied, studying the holographic layout of Nexus Tower. We publicly announced we're moving the children to the corporate retreat facility for their safety. It's isolated, minimal staff, the perfect target. Except we won't actually take them there, Nara finished. Exactly. The children stay here under maximum security with your two most trusted guards. Meanwhile, we travel to the retreat with decoys and wait for them to make their move. Nara nodded, her silver-blue hair catching the morning light. Despite the crisis, Ethan couldn't help but notice how the sunrise highlighted the iridescent quality of her skin. Even exhausted and worried, she was mesmerizing. She caught him looking and held his gaze. What is it? Just thinking how different my life was a week ago, he admitted. Mopping floors, worrying about rent, trying to be both parents for Connor. Do you regret it? Saving Livy? Everything that's happened since? Ethan moved closer, taking her hand. Not for a second. The touch sparked that now familiar electricity between them. For a moment, they stood suspended in possibility, the danger around them only intensifying the connection. When this is over, Nara began. When this is over, Ethan agreed, not needing her to finish the thought. They reluctantly separated to set their plan in motion. Within hours, the official announcement went out. Due to security concerns, the CEO's daughter and her human companions would be relocating to the Nexus Mountain Retreat. Transport was scheduled for mid-afternoon, while the decoys, two security officers with holographic disguises, prepared for the public departure. Ethan and Nara made arrangements to leave secretly an hour earlier. They would arrive at the retreat first and prepare the trap. Before leaving, they visited the children, who had been told they were playing a special game of hide-and-seek. You stay in the secret room with Mira and Dorn, Nara instructed Livy, kneeling to her level. No matter what you hear, don't come out until either Ethan or I come for you. Like a mission? Connor asked excitedly. Dad used to tell me about his missions. Exactly like a mission, buddy. Ethan ruffled his son's hair. And the most important part of any mission is following orders exactly. Understand? Both children nodded solemnly, though Livy's antennae quivered with anxiety. She reached for Connor's hand, and the human boy squeezed it reassuringly. Don't worry, Punti, he told her. My dad's the bravest human ever. He'll catch the bad guys. The simple faith in his son's voice nearly broke Ethan's composure. He pulled Connor into a tight hug, then surprised himself by including Livy in the embrace. The little alien girl's arms wrapped around his neck, her touch cool but comforting. We'll be back soon, he promised them both. As they prepared to leave, Nara pulled Ethan into an empty room, Without a word, she pressed herself against him, her lips finding his in a kiss that contained everything they hadn't had time to say. Unlike their brief contact the night before, this was deep, desperate, a promise and a plea wrapped together. When they finally separated, both breathing hard, Nara whispered, "For luck." "I thought Ceralidians didn't believe in luck," Ethan replied, his voice rough with desire. "I'm learning many human concepts," she said with a smile that made his heart race. "Luck, hope, faith." Her fingers traced his jaw. "Love." The journey to the retreat was tense but uneventful. The facility, a sleek structure built into the side of a mountain overlooking the colony, was staffed by only a skeleton crew, all of whom Nara dismissed upon their arrival, citing confidential security protocols. As night fell, they positioned themselves in the master suite, which offered a clear view of both the landing pad and the main entrance. Security systems were programmed to alert them to any approach while appearing inactive to outside scans. "Now we wait," Ethan said, checking his pulse pistol one last time. Hours passed in vigilant silence. They took turns resting, though neither could truly sleep. During one quiet moment, Nara sat beside Ethan on the observation couch. "If we survive this," she said softly, "there will be consequences. The board won't approve of us. Because I'm human." "Partly, but mostly because you're not afraid of me." Her smile held a hint of mischief. "Most Ceralidians find that terrifying." "I find it attractive," Ethan admitted. "I've noticed." Her hand found his in the darkness. Cerulidian bonding is typically a pragmatic affair. Political alliances, genetic compatibility, corporate mergers. "Sounds romantic," Ethan teased. "It isn't. But we're taught it's logical." She turned to face him fully. "Jared showed me there could be more. And now you—" The security alert chimed softly, interrupting her. A small transport was approaching, running without lights. "They took the bait," Ethan whispered, instantly alert. They moved to their positions, Nara activating the remote surveillance while Ethan readied the containment fields. The transport landed silently on the pad, and 3 figures emerged. Taryn and 2 others Ethan recognized from security footage as board members. Taryn, Advisor Malk, and Director Pren, Nara identified them, her voice cold. "All 3 on my suspect list." The intruders bypassed the outer security with practiced ease, confirming they had inside access, and made their way toward the suite where the children were supposedly sleeping. "Ready?" Ethan asked. Nara nodded, her eyes gleaming with a predator's focus. "No one threatens our children." "Our children." The phrase sent a surge of emotion through Ethan that he had no time to analyze as they triggered the trap. Containment fields sprang to life, immobilizing the intruders instantly. Lights blazed throughout the facility as Ethan and Nara emerged from their hiding place, weapons drawn. "Director Pren!" Nara's voice cut like ice as they approached the frozen figures. "I believe this constitutes a hostile corporate action. Care to explain yourself before I contact Colonial Security?" "The evidence is irrefutable," Nara declared, her voice carrying throughout the Grand Nexus boardroom. 3 weeks had passed since their trap at the mountain retreat. Colonial Security had taken the conspirators into custody, and a thorough investigation had uncovered a trail of corruption leading directly to Kreth, CFO of rival corporation Astral Dynamics. Today, at the emergency shareholder meeting, Nara stood confidently before the assembled board and major investors. Ethan watched from the side, impressed by her commanding presence in her formal CEO attire, a structured suit that somehow managed to look both authoritative and elegant. Director Pren and Advisor Malk have confessed to conspiracy, attempted kidnapping, and corporate espionage, she continued, gesturing to the evidence displays hovering above the conference table. Their statements confirm what many of us suspected. Kreth orchestrated both the elevator sabotage and the subsequent attempt to abduct my daughter. Murmurs rippled through the assembled aliens. Ethan noted the shocked expressions on some board members' faces, the calculating looks on others. Their ultimate goal was to force a merger between Nexus and Astral Dynamics. With Kreth assuming control of the combined entity, Nara explained, my daughter, as a half-human hybrid, was considered an unacceptable heir to Nexus's legacy. She paused, her gaze sweeping the room. This prejudice against humans, against interspecies cooperation, has undermined our colony's potential for too long. It nearly cost my daughter her life, twice." Ethan felt a surge of pride as Nara straightened to her full height, her voice taking on a tone he'd never heard before, not just commanding, but visionary. "Today I propose a new direction for Nexus Corporation, one that embraces diversity as strength, one that recognizes humans not as subordinates but as equals, partners in building our shared future." The proposal that followed was bold, a restructuring of Nexus's leadership to include human representatives, new initiatives for interspecies collaboration, and a strategic partnership, not merger, with Earth-based companies to expand their reach. As the board deliberated, Nara joined Ethan in the antechamber. "That was impressive," he said, taking her hand. "You're changing the entire corporate culture." "It's overdue," she replied, "and I have a particularly compelling example of human excellence to cite." Her cool fingers intertwined with his, a gesture that had become familiar and cherished over the past weeks. Their relationship had deepened during the investigation. Stolen moments between security briefings, late nights reviewing evidence, shared meals with their increasingly inseparable children. They hadn't put a name to what was growing between them, but they both felt its inevitability. The boardroom doors opened, and Nara's assistant beckoned them back inside. The vote had been tallied. Nara's proposals were approved by a narrow margin. Several board members resigned in protest, but the majority recognized the wisdom in her vision, particularly after Colonial Security had frozen Astral Dynamics assets pending their investigation into Kreth. As they left the boardroom, Nara's communicator chimed with an urgent alert from Home Security. "The children!" she gasped, her face paling to a lighter shade of turquoise. They raced to the executive transport pad where Nara's private shuttle waited. The journey to the residential tower took only minutes, but each second stretched agonizingly as the security alerts continued. "Unauthorized entry, fire suppression systems activated, emergency protocols engaged," the automated system reported. Ethan's mind flashed back to the burning elevator, to Livy's terrified eyes as flames surrounded her. History was repeating itself, but this time, Connor was there too. When they arrived, the residential level was in chaos. Security personnel rushed through smoke-filled corridors as the building's systems worked to contain what appeared to be multiple small fires. "Kreth," Nara hissed, recognizing the signature of the attack. "He must have had a contingency plan." They pushed through to the children's quarters, where they found the guards unconscious outside the sealed door. Inside, smoke billowed from several incendiary devices strategically placed to cut off escape routes. "Connor! Livy!" Ethan called, activating the emergency ventilation. A small voice responded from the panic room. Not Livy's or Connor's, but the household AI. "The children are not in the secure room, Mr. Miller. They evacuated through the maintenance shaft when the first device activated." "Smart kids," Ethan muttered, pride mingling with fear. "Where are they now?" "Unknown. Communications are jammed in this sector." Nara's face was a mask of controlled terror. "They know the emergency protocols. They'd head for the secondary safe room on level 85. They raced to the service elevator, but found it disabled. "Stairs," Ethan decided, already moving toward the emergency exit. 7 floors down, they encountered the children, but not alone. Kreth himself held Livy by the arm, a small weapon pointed at her head. Connor stood defiantly in front of them, his small body positioned protectively despite the obvious danger. "Let her go," the human boy demanded, his voice steady despite his fear. "My dad's coming, and he's going to kick your scaly butt." Kreth hissed in amusement. "Such spirit. Perhaps we should keep you as a pet when this is over." "Let the children go, Kreth," Nara called, her voice echoing in the stairwell. "Colonial Security already has your associates. It's over." The reptilian alien's vertical pupils narrowed. "And nothing is over while you and your abomination live. Nexus belongs to pure Cerealidians, not human lovers and half-breeds." Ethan assessed the situation with military precision. Kreth was focused on Nara, the weapon trained on Livy. Connor was directly in the line of fire, but also blocking Kreth's escape route. Their eyes met across the distance, father and son, and Ethan saw something in Connor that made his chest swell with pride. The same instinct that had driven him to pry open burning elevator doors without thought for himself. With a sudden movement, Connor stomped hard on Kreth's foot and grabbed Livy's hand, pulling her toward him as the alien roared in pain and surprise. The weapon discharged, missing both children but igniting a decorative panel on the wall. Ethan lunged forward as flames erupted, tackling Kreth while Nara rushed to the children. The reptilian alien was stronger than he looked, his scales providing natural armor against Ethan's blows. They grappled dangerously close to the spreading fire. "Dad!" Connor shouted. "The ceiling!" Ethan glanced up to see the fire suppression system directly above them. With a powerful shove, he forced Kreth under the sensor just as Connor hit the manual override. Freezing suppressant foam rained down, instantly hardening around the reptilian's cold-blooded form and immobilizing him. The danger neutralized, Ethan turned to find Connor and Livy clinging to each other, both shaken but unharmed. Nara enveloped them in her arms, her eyes meeting Ethan's over their heads with a look of profound gratitude and something deeper. Later, after Colonial Security had taken Kreth away and medical teams had treated them for minor smoke inhalation, the four of them gathered in Nara's secure study. The children, exhausted from their ordeal, had fallen asleep on the couch, Livy's head on Connor's shoulder, his arm protectively around her. "Like father, like son," Nara said softly, watching them. He didn't hesitate to protect her. "That's the Miller way," Ethan replied with a tired smile. "Rush into burning buildings. Ask questions later." Nara moved closer, her cool hand finding his. "I've been asking myself what Jared would think of all this. Of us, and I think he would approve. He always believed humans and Ceruleans were stronger together." Her eyes held his. "I know I do." Ethan pulled her gently into his arms. "So what happens now, CEO Venn? Where do a human janitor and his son fit into your corporate restructuring?" "Former janitor," she corrected with a smile. "Current head of security and—" She hesitated, then continued softly. "Life partner, if you're amenable to Cerulean bonding traditions." "I might be persuaded," Ethan murmured, lowering his lips to hers. "Especially if they involve more of this." Their kiss deepened, a promise of the night to come when the children were safely in their beds. Two different species, two different worlds, finding in each other the missing piece they hadn't known they were seeking. When they finally separated, Nara rested her forehead against his in the traditional Cerulean gesture of intimate connection. "You know," she whispered, "there's an old Cerulean saying, 'Fire reveals the true nature of all beings.' I think your earth hands prove that true." Ethan looked down at his palms. The faint scars a reminder of the burning elevator that had changed everything. "Worth every blister," he said simply, drawing her close again. As they stood together watching their sleeping children, Ethan reflected on how quickly life could change. How a routine maintenance call had led him to this moment, to this woman, to a future he could never have imagined. Sometimes it seemed you had to get burned to find exactly where you belonged.